Sustainability consultant Alan Atkinson once wrote, quote, "Translating complex eco-assessment data into language that ordinary people can understand and that can make the difficult journey through the many lines of defense against even hearing such disturbing information is rather crucial to our whole undertaking. It is more art and strategy than science. And as a discipline, we sustainability assessors are still not very good at messaging," end quote. As Atkinson suggests, that more people don't behave in sustainable ways is not necessarily a scientific problem, but one of a rhetorical nature, and hence what I, as a rhetorical scholar, saw as an imperative to develop a course on rhetoric and sustainability here at UGA. Through the course of my brief talk right now, I will indirectly answer the question of what rhetorical studies can offer sustainability science by talking about my course. First, I'm going to describe the theory of social symbolic construction that the rhetorical perspective relies upon. Then I'm going to talk about how I encourage my students to perform rhetorical criticism or critiques of existing sustainability literature and texts in order to determine how to rhetorically intervene in a local sustainability problem. And last, I'll make a call for continued partnerships between the humanities and the social science, or the humanities and the sciences. To begin, courses in rhetoric are based upon the assumption that rhetoric or language and other symbolic systems do things. So language doesn't just represent an object, it also works to create that object. As Kenneth Burke would say, language is a deterministic screen, and it orients us towards things in particular ways. We see things through that deterministic screen, and we don't see other things. So, for example, if I told you that this is nature, which according to Google, this is nature, this is the image that pops up when you type nature into Google, you're oriented towards it in particular ways. You might think about protection. But if I told you that this is nature, or this is nature, right, you might have to change your idea of what nature is, or you might rethink your behaviors in that space. This is a picture of what our students lovingly refer to as Frat Beach in St. Simon's, or on St. Simon's Island, that literally gets trashed every November when students go down south for the Georgia-Florida game. And every year we ask, why does this happen? Why does this happen? Well, it's maybe because we call it Frat Beach. Could be possibly part of it, right? We don't call it Precious Ecosystem Beach or Community Treasure Beach, right? Might the change in the language shift a change and create a change in behavior? Potentially. As a rhetorician, I am prone to thinking, maybe, yes. And that's because language shapes our realities. So building on this foundation about language as constructing reality, I try to encourage students to feel emboldened to intervene in problems rhetorically. And so I asked my students to do this past semester, to rhetorically intervene in a sustainability problem, which is different than other types of intervention. So if the problem was cigarette litter in Athens, which is a significant problem and has pretty significant impacts for our environment and community, the solution is not get a bunch of people together and pick up the cigarette butts. Rhetorically, at least, that's not the solution. Instead, it's how do I craft a message, or how do I craft a series of messages to create a reality in which disposing of a cigarette butt by dropping it on the ground is not even possible. So it falls outside of logic. We constitute a new reality. Difficult, but something I asked them to undertake. And in order to do this, we engaged in rhetorical criticism of what we thought of as both very persuasive and not very persuasive arguments about sustainability. We looked at Colin Bevan's No Impact Man, a couple different popular texts such as Less is More, and then more formalized sustainability studies like Atkinson's Sustainability Transformation. The students then developed rhetorical strategies based on what we learned from analysis. These are some of the ones, and I'll show you a couple of their projects before closing here. So ethos, pathos, and logos, that's Aristotle. In order for something to be persuasive, it needs to come from what's perceived as a credible source. It needs to use emotion, and then have appeals to logos or logic. So many students wrote op-eds for the flagpole or for the red and black, trying to employ those devices, so using what we learned about rhetoric to try to persuade people to make change. Constitutive rhetoric is another tool that we might use in order to try to construct a reality in which people see themselves in that reality as sustainable beings. And one group did a fairly good job with that, using that tool in an op-ed for the flagpole. Another idea is image events, which is this idea that images can be more powerful than words. And that images, as an argumentative fragment, can make a more powerful argument than you could using ethos, pathos, and logos. In particular, this theory comes from some of the images that came out of the civil rights movement in the 60s, this image in particular, which rhetorical scholars have argued was more persuasive. Actually, the effect of this was more noticeable than all the speeches, presidential rhetoric prior to that, in terms of shaping moderate American or moderate whites' beliefs about civil rights when this image circulated. You'll be surprised to hear that my students struggled with creating an image like this in 16 weeks, but they did do some things to try to get an image to circulate or become a circulating image. So my hope today is that while my students in these projects, while my students certainly did not make lasting impacts probably with their semester-long projects, I hope that what lasts is how they think about language and their ability to invoke social change. And my hope in being here today is also to instigate continued conversations between the sciences and the humanities and sustainability. For a more sustainable future depends not only on equipping our students with the ability to understand science, but also teaching them how to find just the right words to provoke real lasting change. Thanks.